Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. Let's take tech in the right direction to drive social change and close the employment, pay, and culture gap for women in technology. This podcast is focused on helping turn ideas into action and create opportunities for women to advance in the dynamic technology industry. I hope this podcast will inspire and motivate you to encourage more women and girls to seek or grow a career as a woman in technology. Stories about the journey of amazing women in the tech field starts right now. Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. This week, I'll be speaking with Andrea Stevenson Conner. Andrea is a change agent and strategic relationship builder. Through her success in global leadership roles spanning 4 countries, she promotes corporate social responsibility, cultural awareness, leadership development, and gender equity. As principal of Stevenson Conner Global Strategies, she is committed to advocating for the gender multiplier effect, the quantifiable ripple created when women and girls find their voices and become economically empowered. This results in healthier families, stronger communities, and ultimately accelerates the growth of the local, national, and global GDP. She is a thought leader on global citizenship and delivers messages to raise awareness of the challenges facing women's educational and equal opportunity advancement. Andrea holds a master's degree in global leadership from Duquesne University and a bachelor's degree in economics and business from Edinburgh University. She currently resides in Cary, North Carolina, with her best friend and husband, Ed. She has 2 sons. Welcome to the show, Andrea. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Great. Well, let's get started. So can you share with us your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, it's interesting that I'm on a podcast about technology because people would laugh. I'm sometimes even turning my computer on is a challenge for me. I don't close everything out, so I get yelled at for having too much open. But you know what? I kind of got where I am by seeing challenges as opportunities. We ended up moving 8 times in 13 years across 4 countries. And so I felt like I was always having to reinvent myself in a new location. And started out in banking, which is where I met my husband. And then I sold radio advertising, and then kind of shifted to the nonprofit sector and have been advocating for corporate social responsibility and the economic empowerment of women for a number of years. In some of my foreign locations, I had the opportunity to work with UN Women in Beijing and really came to understand where my passion and purpose lies around helping women find their voice.
That's amazing. So you've been advising women and helping them find a voice. Can you share some stories on how you accomplished this?
Sure. I think first of all, having that opportunity to be uncomfortable a lot with moving from the United States to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, then to Germany, and then to China, and back and forth. I had that opportunity to being uncomfortable. It's kind of like being the new kid all the time, but being the new kid where you don't look the same, you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture. And prior to moving to Malaysia, I had never been outside the United States, so I got my first passport at the age of 36, and that was kind of an epiphany and aha moment where I was uncomfortable and then figured out how to lean in on my skills, which you're going to hear about probably a little bit later, called the Athena Leadership Principles.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's an Athena Award recipient, and she taught me these 8 principles of leadership just by watching her model that effort. And so I knew that if I could do it, that other women could. And I met some amazing women in entrepreneurial positions in Southeast Asia, in Europe when we would travel a lot, and it really taught me about the resiliency of women.
Yeah, that's great to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's when you grow, and that's how you learn as well. Now, you traveled quite extensively in these different countries. Was that based on jobs that took you there, or what was the reason for moving to those countries?
So my husband worked for an international organization that took us to these locations. So I
Okay.
had kind of the best of both worlds, and I would kind of see what challenges were wherever I was, and that became an opportunity for me to continue to learn and to give back in those communities and develop programs, be able to be a change agent in those various locations. So I led an international school when we were in Germany and chaired the board, led the building committee, and we built a state-of-the-art international school that became the MAC World Lab at that point in time when we were there. So it gave me some really great opportunities to be uncomfortable and find out how I could contribute to the greater good wherever I was.
That's great. So your global experiences, how do you compare women in tech or just women in business in general from these other countries to the US? What would you see there are big differences, or are there many things that are just alike?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the generation, right? So my generation, we did not grow up with a device in our hand. And so, learning to use that device along the way and the experience that technology brings. Well, the period of time that we were living abroad was when you were seeing um, Apple products and smartphones really coming online. And what was fascinating when we were living in Southeast Asia in 2000, 2001 time period, it's kind of when the cell phones were coming out, and I was changing my cell phone like I was changing my shoes. I could get a new cell phone, every day. Where back in the United States, we were still on cellular data, and it was much slower at that process. And so what I saw is in Southeast Asia that women there and people in general were so comfortable with technology. It was just happening and changing so quickly that I think it created a lot of creativity and innovation. Now here in the U.S., we're catching up for sure, and so many of the emerging leaders and professionals come to universities in the United States, so that process is catching up. But I do think there is an advantage that, at least in China in particular, when we were there, I was involved with emerging professional women and an entrepreneurial group called the Startup Grind, and I still follow them on the platform called WeChat. And so you can see where there's that thinking that they have it because it changes so fast. When we went back, we left there, let me think, we were there 2012 to 2016, and went back prior to COVID, and every time I would go back to visit or to be a part of an initiative out there, the leaps that they had taken in technology were just fascinating. We're just starting to get to where you can scan your phone at a checkout counter here in the United States. Well, when I went back in 2017, they wouldn't even take my cash. They were like, do you have Alipay or WeChat Pay? So they have progressed through that so much faster than where we have in this country. So I think in some ways it gives them a bit of an edge because they're moving through it so quickly. But I do think because of the education that we have in our country and the innovation and creative thinking that we provide in our educational systems allows us to navigate through that quicker.
That's great. Great thoughts and feedback on that area. So you've had incredible success in your career. And what do you attribute the success to? I understand the uncomfortable situations made you grow, but what else comes to mind when you say, what do I attribute all this success to?
Building relationships and being engaged in fostering collaboration. I love nothing more than to get a group of people around a challenge and creating a solution.
I love that.
There's so much that you can make happen when you do it collectively. And I'll be the first to admit I'm not the smartest person in the room. There's always somebody that is so much better at technology or at communication skills or whatever piece you need to solve a problem. There's always somebody that is really good at that. And if we can find a way to work together to solve the problem, a lot of times I've been told that I'm like the Pied Piper. My strength comes in knowing and seeing what the challenge is and how can we get the right people around the table and have that passion to complete something together and celebrate and, solve something for the audience or the people involved.
That's great. And I mean, that's a skill in itself to bring the right people around the table, right? So it's great that you have that ability to form these relationships and networks so that when there is this challenge that you're trying to solve, you have the right people at the table. And I think that's tremendous skill to bring out to be successful. So that's great.
Well, and you think of all the amazing people that you get to meet.
Yeah, then that's the fun of it, right? I mean,
it absolutely is.
Even in the podcast, when I talk to different people, it's just so great. I learn so much from them, and then I listen to other podcasts and learn from their guests. So it's always growing. It's great. Did you know that there is an increase in the number of women leaving the tech industry? As a woman-owned business, Directions Training has made it our mission and passion to change this statistic. That's why Jennifer created this podcast. We showcase insight from everyday women for everyday women in the tech industry. Do you know other people that would benefit from tuning in? Share the link and help us drive the advancement of women in the tech industry. Do you have a journey or know of someone that our listeners would benefit from hearing about? Reach out to us at directionstraining.com/podcast. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and wherever you find your podcasts. Now, back to the show. Now, tell us more about Athena and the 8 principles of leadership and, what you're doing around this for women.
Sure. So, as I said earlier, that my mother's an Athena Award recipient out of Erie, Pennsylvania. So I often say that I was brainwashed with these principles growing up, and they're like a toolkit. These 8 principles of enlightened leadership that come intuitively to women. Not that doesn't mean that men don't have them, because men absolutely do have them, but they come naturally or intuitively to women because of all the roles that we play in society. Living authentically, learning constantly, advocating fiercely, fostering collaboration, building relationships, courageous acts, giving back, and celebrate are the 8 principles. And Athena was founded in 1982. It's a nonprofit that is committed to supporting, developing, and honoring women leaders. So having that toolkit and the passion around supporting women has been something that I've really loved being involved with. When you talk about women in technology, my experience with working with UN Women when I was in Beijing back in, what would that have been, 2016. That was kind of where I learned about the fourth industrial revolution and how it was going to move women backwards. And so I felt that passion and I wanted women to have a voice and to be able to be involved in our future. I didn't want to see things going backwards. And so I had this great opportunity leading Athena International to work with another nonprofit called the WIT Network and to develop an emerging leaders program that will help women in technology find their voice. And I'm so thrilled that you had the opportunity to be in one of the early cohorts. So
You did.
I had the opportunity to kind of see what that vision looked like. How do you help women find their voice so that they can take their career journey or life journey to wherever they want to go, and to know that they're not alone is, I think, the big piece.
Yeah, to be part of a cohort and to build those relationships. Again, we talked about how important building relationships is in your career, in your network, in growing your skill set, all of those things. That cohort, that I was part of really brought new friendships and created everlasting bonds. I think, for you to know there's somebody there who's there to support you. So that is such a great program. I got to experience it, and I'm so happy that it's a continuous program. I think you're on, what cohort are you on now?
So 7 and 8 are going through the process right now and just about ready to wrap up. And I think number 9 and 10 will be starting relatively soon. So
That's nice.
by we're cohorts of 22 to 25 women from across the technology sector. And what's really amazing is it's not just domestically in the United States, but international. So it helps to kind of create that understanding across cultures, which I think is so important. That was one of the key things that, for me, having that passport and to witness women in other cultures, how they are navigating their lives, and to see the courage that women have when goals that they need.
So, the first principle is living authentically. What kind of advice can you give our listeners on living authentically? What can they do to be more authentic, be more vulnerable? Like we were talking earlier, we always want everything to be perfect. We, consistently judge ourselves and we're never good enough. But what advice do you have on living authentically?
I mean, the first part is, giving yourself permission to show up as your authentic self. So what are your true passions and drivers? And, we're seeing a lot of that in communications now that is coming out, and organizations with their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs allowing a culture where people can show up as their authentic self. I'm actually in the midst of a certification from Cornell University on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just the people from different industries that are also going through that program as well. At this point in time, there's a lot of conversation about making a culture where individuals can show up as their authentic selves. And so, my advice to you, you can't continue to not show up as yourself. It eventually is going to wear you down. It's almost like you're acting in a role in your career or in your home. If you're not showing up as your authentic self, it eventually wears you down. You're not as innovative. You're not creative. You're not showing up as the best that you can be if you're not living authentically. So I think it's fun, maybe you have to inch your way into it. If you feel like you can't show up at work or in your life with what you're truly passionate about, maybe find an outside outlet an art class or a dance class or meditation, that it gives you an opportunity to start trying on showing up and being who you authentically are. And as our work environments and places start to allow for that authentic conversation, of course, you always have to be kind. So maybe sometimes your authentic self wants to yell, but it's really important to always be kind and be true to your word. Don't make assumptions about what people are thinking. Have a conversation and find out. It could just be something that a perception that you're taking, and what is really authentically that other individual is authentically thinking or doing.
That's great. And I loved when you started out to say, give yourself permission to be authentic, because sometimes we don't do that. We always feel we have to be somebody to others that they want us to be, And so I love that permission piece. So that's great. So Andrea, you love golf. So tell us about Leadership Raleigh.
So thank you for asking about that. So I'm actually in the midst of, as a learning constantly and living authentically myself, I'm in the midst of a leadership program through our local Chamber of Commerce. And one of the things, each of us, we are put into these cohorts. So I got a chance to be in a cohort just like you, Jennifer. And we have to do a community service project. So our project was to create a event called For, like the golfing word for, F-O-R-E, Her Future. And it was a mentoring golf tournament that we brought together established professionals in the market with emerging female students from a program called the First Tee. That's the nonprofit that we decided to partner with. And we had a fabulous day golfing with these young women, and oh my gosh, they could hit the golf ball incredibly well. But on each, we took turns where the mentors and the mentees asked a question while we played golf together. The feedback has just been phenomenal. So there's just so many opportunities to be able to take advantage of sport and to be mentoring an emerging leader.
I love that. What a great concept, and nothing better to be on the golf course, fresh air, and
absolutely,
you can be yourself. And I love that. That's great.
And if the young person hits the ball farther than you just celebrate her success.
Absolutely. Well, in my case, she definitely would. I'm consistently straight, but not far enough.
Me too.
Yeah. So you've traveled a lot. You've got, a lot of countries under your belt. What is the most favorite place you've traveled to, and why?
Good question. You know what? I loved them all for a variety of reasons. I have to say that I really enjoyed China because of the deep culture that is there. And there's so much, we're hearing so much about China in the news and the rise of China. But to understand the background and the history of the country and the young women that I met was phenomenal. During that period of time that we lived there, I worked with a nonprofit called the World Academy for the Future of Women. And by the time my husband and I left, we had hosted about 40 emerging women leaders in our Shanghai apartment. Program was out in rural China in Henan province, and they were all getting ready to, take that next step from university, from student to career professional. And they knew that they were going to have to potentially go to a big city like Shanghai for their career profession. And so we helped them set up internships and job shadow experiences. So we say that we had 40 Chinese daughters that check in with. I actually started with Mother's Day coming around the corner. I started getting messages about, Happy Mother's Day. So it was. I think I left my heart there in China because I made such amazing connections and relationships.
I love that. And yeah, when you have the connections, the relationships, the experiences, that's exactly what makes you love any place that you've been. I always say our best vacations or the best restaurants always are chosen as the best ones because we've had some great experiences there. And I love that. I actually mentored a Chinese girl that was going through graduate school. And it was so fulfilling because, like you said, there's so much culture and history, there that you learn more than you're giving, you're learning at the same time. And so I loved that.
And the other thing about that period of time that we were there, that the Chinese economy was just growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, so you would go, maybe travel for 2 weeks and come back, and there'd be like a whole new building up, and just the speed that it was evolving was really fascinating to see. And it's when a lot of the social media apps were coming online, and the bicycle apps where you could I think Lime is the one here in the US. They had some different ones, and ride hailing apps. Those were all things that were coming out at that point in time. So I felt like we were kind of in the epicenter when all this new innovation and technology was happening. And I'm sure it still is, but it just kind of really stuck in my mind about how creative and innovative things can be.
Yeah, and how fast moving too.
And how fast.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. This was so fun. I could talk to you forever, it seems like. But, in closing, what advice would you give to a woman considering a career in technology or maybe even a global career where they're thinking of maybe going out of the country at some point? What advice would you give her?
I would say just do it.
Yep.
Do it, and embrace the opportunity. Realize that you may not know perfectly, that you're going to. There's always opportunities to learn, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Right now, with the World Economic Forum is telling us with the rise of machine learning and automation, that a huge number, 85 million jobs will be eliminated by the year 2025. Wow. At the same time, they expect 97 million new jobs will be created that are all technology based. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it means that you have to be a coder. If you think about it, they're everywhere you go. When you go to the grocery store, you're using technology to check out now. So there are lots of ways to be ingrained in technology. Just, choosing to be curious and take training programs that help you learn that new technology.
I love that. That's great advice. Great advice. Today, 56%, this is the US statistic, 56% of jobs are taken by women, but only 16% are women in technology. So we really want to help grow and bridge that gap because, like you said, technology is everything. It doesn't have to be coding. It's everywhere and in everything, from our refrigerators to our lamps to our, outlets. Everything has technology today. So there's so many different facets of technology that our listeners or women can be interested in. And like you said, just do it, learn, and follow your passion.
Yeah. And, women, you just bring your unique skills that you as a woman can to the opportunity. That's so good at, building relationship and being compassionate. Be compassionate to that person next to you that maybe not so good at technology, and, share your skills and bring it along.
Great. Yep, great advice. And I loved what you said before was just always be kind. Sometimes you might not want to be kind, but always be kind.
Be kind.
Be kind, yes. Well, Andrea, this was such a pleasure. Can you share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. LinkedIn is always a great place to find me. It's Andrea Stevenson, Stevenson, Conner. Or my website is Stevenson Conner Global Strategies.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrea. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope to have you on a future show sometime.
I would love that.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you for listening to Tech in the Right Direction. Please take a minute to subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thank you. See you next week.
From IT skill enhancements to end-user adoption training, Directions Training is your resource to help optimize the effectiveness of your technology investments. Over 500,000 students have taken advantage of our wide selection of technology and business training solutions, covering the most popular applications today, such as Microsoft 365, Azure, Windows 10, and more. As a podcast listener, we invite you to take advantage of an exclusive offer. Receive 30 days of free access to our Microsoft official curriculum on-demand courses for IT professionals or end users. Visit us at www.directionstraining.com/podcast to claim this offer today. Hurry, this offer is only available for a limited time. Success is a journey. Ask for directions.